The rise and fall of the state of Franklin. In the years following the American Revolution, something extraordinary happened in the mountains of America, something most people have forgotten. A new state was born from rebellion. Settlers carved a government from wilderness, patriots declared independence from their own country. For 4 years they fought to exist. Then came betrayal, collapse, and war between neighbors. A dream state vanished, its legacy buried, and America moved on without it. Act 1. The Founding. The founding of Franklin was one of the most audacious political experiments in early American history. It revealed the fragile nature of the young United States in the 1780s. For 5 years, historian Dr. Kevin Barksdale of Marshall University has immersed himself in studying this forgotten state. He's consulted archives across Tennessee, North Carolina, and Washington examining land deeds, letters, court records, and military documents. He's traced the political maneuverings of the 1780s from the Appalachian frontier. His research tells the story of a democratic experiment that nearly added a 14th state to the Union before collapsing into violence and obscurity. The Western Settlements. The story begins in 1784 in the western counties of North Carolina. These settlements lay beyond the Appalachian Mountains in what is now eastern Tennessee, Washington, Sullivan, and Greene counties. The frontier families who lived there felt abandoned by their state government in Raleigh, over 300 miles away. "We were left to fend for ourselves against Native American raids," explains Barksdale. North Carolina provided almost no military protection or infrastructure. But what truly ignited rebellion was North Carolina's shocking decision in April 1784, drowning in Revolutionary War debts. The state legislature voted to cede its western lands to the federal government. The western settlers were being abandoned, entirely handed over to Congress like property without their consent. This was their worst fear realized, says Barksdale. They'd be left without any government at all, vulnerable to attacks and with no legal system, John Sevier and the convention. Into this crisis stepped John Sevier, a veteran of the Revolution and hero of the Battle of Kings Mountain. Sevier was the most respected man on the frontier. In August 1784, delegates from the western counties met in Jonesboro to decide their fate. Should they accept abandonment? Should they submit to uncertain federal control? Or should they form their own state? The convention voted for independence. They would create the state of Franklin, named to honor Benjamin Franklin, hoping his prestige would help them gain admission to the Union. The government forms on December 14, 1784. A constitutional convention gathered in Greenville. They adopted a constitution and established a government. John Sevier was elected governor. Franklin had its own legislature, courts, and militia. Tax collectors began gathering revenue, often paid in animal skins and crops since currency was scarce. This was a functioning state government, notes Barksdale. They were printing laws, conducting trials, defending their borders. For the people living there, Franklin was absolutely real. Act 2. The struggle for recognition. But creating a state was one thing. Getting the United States to recognize it was quite another. Under the Articles of Confederation, 9 of the 13 states had to approve Franklin's admission. William Koch was dispatched to Philadelphia to petition Congress. The vote came in May 1785. 7 states voted yes, 5 voted no, 1 abstained. Franklin fell 2 votes short. That vote sealed Franklin's fate, says constitutional historian Dr. Sarah Burns. Without congressional approval, Franklin had no legal standing. It was an outlaw state. North Carolina strikes back. Making matters worse, North Carolina had reversed its cession. In November 1784, the legislature changed course and reclaimed the western counties. Now Franklin faced an existential threat. North Carolina was reasserting control. "You had 2 competing governments claiming the same territory," explains Barksdale, "both appointing sheriffs, both collecting taxes, both holding courts." By 1787, the situation became increasingly chaotic. Some citizens paid taxes to Franklin, others paid North Carolina. Some paid both to avoid trouble. Violence began to erupt between Franklin and North Carolina supporters. The Tipton-Sevier conflict. The conflict personified itself in two men, John Sevier and John Tipton. Tipton, once a Franklin supporter, had turned against the state and sided with North Carolina. In February 1788, tensions exploded into open warfare. Tipton's men seized some of Sevier's slaves and property as payment for North Carolina taxes. Sevier responded by gathering 150 armed men and besieging Tipton's fortified farm. For several days, the two forces exchanged gunfire in what became known as the Battle of Frankland. Before a full battle could develop, both sides backed down, but the damage was done. Franklin was descending into Civil War Act III, the collapse. By 1788, Franklin was falling apart. The legislature could barely gather a quorum. Citizens were defecting to North Carolina. The economy, based on barter, was collapsing under debt. Native American raids increased as tribes took advantage of the chaos. In September 1788, John Sevier's term as governor expired. No successor was elected. The state of Franklin simply ceased to exist. "It just dissolved," says Barksdale. People stopped showing up to government functions. The institutions collapsed, and North Carolina stepped back in to fill the vacuum, Sevier's fate. For John Sevier, the collapse was personal. North Carolina indicted him for treason. In 1789, he was arrested, but before he could be tried, supporters broke him out of jail. The charges were eventually dropped. In a remarkable political comeback, Sevier was elected to the North Carolina legislature, and when Tennessee finally achieved statehood in 1796, John Sevier became its first governor. He served 6 terms and became one of Tennessee's founding fathers. The failed rebel had become a founding statesman. The legacy. So why did Franklin fail? Historians point to several factors: the weakness of the federal government under the Articles of Confederation, the opposition of North Carolina, which needed the western lands for its own finances, the lack of hard currency to fund a proper government, and the divided loyalties of frontier settlers themselves. Franklin shows us how fragile the United States was in the 1780s, reflects Dr. Burns. The nation was barely holding together. Franklin nearly succeeded in breaking off. If it had, others might have followed. Closing today, very little physical evidence of Franklin remains: a historical marker in Greenville, a monument in Jonesboro, a few courthouse records. But for 4 years, the state of Franklin was real. It had a government, laws, citizens. It nearly became the 14th state. Instead, it became a footnote, a reminder that American democracy, in its infancy, was far more chaotic and uncertain than we often remember. End. For more video like this, like, subscribe, and comment. See you in the next one.